We are back with the fifth episode of the Boxing Week Ahead, once again joined by ESBR's Paul Kelly. And on this show, you might be listening to us and not seeing our faces. This is our first show on Apple and Spotify. So if you are watching on the YouTube channel, please do. There will be a link in the description. Please do check it out on Apple and Spotify. Subscribe, do all that stuff over there, because there will be a load of content, not just from this show, but across the ESBR platform, that it will be going on those Spotify and Apple platforms. So on this week's show, we'll be previewing, and some people might turn off straight away when they hear this, but we are previewing the Jake Paul, Tyron Woodley fight on Sunday night and the rest of that card. There is a few British fighters in there with Fury and Dubois. And then we'll be looking at the BT Sport card from Birmingham, which is Woodley and Ennis-Brown and Sam Maxwell and the rest of that card as well. So, Paul, we're back again here. Obviously, we go from a great in Manny Pacquiao to Jake Paul and Tyron Woodley, and it feels a bit strange. But I think this fight does have some validity. Are you looking forward to this fight? What do you make of it?
Yeah. What are you talking about? A step down from Manny Pacquiao to Jake Paul? No, sure. But anyway, no. I'm looking forward to hopefully seeing Jake Paul get beat. As I mentioned it on the betting show, I'm just not a fan of him at all. But we'll not get into that, don't need to, because why would he care what Paul Kelly from Belfast thinks? But anyway, yeah. So I am looking forward to the fight. When you just take away who the two men are, it's essentially a 3-0 prospect, I suppose you have to call him, against a debutant in boxing who has had an extensive mixed martial arts career. So on paper, you look at it and it does appeal. I know what you said at the start there, people might turn off or whatever, but to the greater audience, I feel like this fight does appeal because they know who Jake Paul is. Then it might appeal to maybe UFC, MMA fans who don't necessarily watch too much boxing, but they're like, oh yeah, Tyron Woodley, I used to love Tyron Woodley, I'm going to tune in and watch this fight. Oh, he's fighting that mouthy YouTuber. Oh, I want to see him beat him. Or, all the Jake Paul's fans are going, oh, he's fighting in a proper, old UFC champion. What if he actually beats him? Maybe he's actually really, really good. So I do think in that sense, it's an appealing fight. The actual contest, I don't know how good the boxing will be. I know we had a slight disagreement before we came on here about the level that we believe Jake Paul's at. But I am looking forward to the fight, and although you don't necessarily want to admit it, it is intriguing, and you probably will watch it. If not live, you'll watch it the next morning because you're interested to see what happens. What about yourself? Are you going to stay up to watch?
I won't be staying up to watch on a Sunday night, and I won't be paying £17, but I will watch it in the morning. I'm going to preface by saying that I do want Woodley to win. That we're both big UFC guys. I love Tyron Woodley. I grew up watching Tyron Woodley. I want Tyron Woodley to win. For me, boxing is at its best when there's questions to be asked and questions to be answered. And this kind of fight, there are questions that people have, as you've already mentioned some of them. How good is Jake Paul? How good is a UFC champion in boxing? What level are these guys at is the main thing. How far can Jake Paul go? And on Sunday night, we will find out all of those answers, hopefully, barring any weird stoppages or anything like that. So for me, it is actually quite an intriguing fight, as much as we hate to say it. And I do think Jake Paul's quite good, and quite good's probably an exaggeration, but for me, I didn't like this YouTube boxing stuff that much until I saw the commitment that these guys are putting in. The Logan Paul and Jake Paul, especially Jake Paul, seems to be the guy who takes it the most seriously, training in Big Bear. When you get Sugar Shane Mosley in your camp, that for me it adds some validity. If he's going to put his name on this, then like, who am I to say that let's not watch it and let's rubbish it completely? I think it's also intriguing having a guy, like you say, a former UFC champion. Admittedly, he isn't who he was 4 or 5 years ago in the octagon. Whether in the ring he can kind of regain some of that notoriety and some of that just that level and that talent that he did have. How much weight do you put into those like last few fights? I know he lost to Vicente Luque in his last UFC fight. Obviously, he hasn't won since beating Darren Till in Dallas. He hasn't really won around since beating down Darren Till in Dallas. So,
Yeah.
how much weight do you put into those?
I don't think you can ignore it. You're right. Like I don't think you can just go, oh yeah, it's Tyron Woodley who beat Darren Till, who knocked out Robbie Lawler, who beat Wonderboy Thompson. I don't think you can't just rubbish the last 4 fights of his UFC career completely. Because as you say, he went from being, well, what I thought he was one of my favorites, like an unstoppable, unbeatable champion at the time. Then boom, 4 fights in a row, barely threw any shots, looked to be on the back foot, and didn't look like he wanted to kind of be there anymore. He did put in. Then, as I mentioned to you before, I don't know whether Woodley's mentality, maybe for high level competition in the UFC, might have gone, but I think I could be completely wrong here. I think at 39 years old, he's looking at Jake Paul, who's 15 years is younger, by the way, which I find kind of staggering as well. 15 years in age between these two on fighting at the weekend, but I don't know whether it's maybe an ego thing of Woodley, obviously, because he's been there, he's been at the very top of given a different sport, but obviously one of some aspects of mixed martial arts you involve striking and boxing, and he does have. He's not like a Ben Askren who didn't train like and was out of shape and didn't never and everyone knew he had no hands the whole time. This is Tyron Woodley who does have hands. Okay, he's from a wrestling base. He does have hands though. He's he's just in better shape. He always has been, and he will turn up in better shape. Yes, he is getting older, and he lost those 4 in a row. But for me, I think he might look at Jake Paul and say, "I can't let this guy beat me. I don't care if it's boxing. I'm not a boxer. I can't let this 24-year-old young YouTube brash American fella beat me. Like I don't know. I could be completely wrong, and it could come onto the fight, and Woodley could, freeze or not throw any shots like he did in his last few fights. But I just think he's been UFC champion. He was the best. He could call himself the best in the world for a few years. And I think that ego, I hope he does carry it into the fight, thinking like I can't let this guy beat me, because then I don't know, we might see. I'm not saying we're going to see the best Tyron Woodley because he's pushing 40 years old,
Yeah.
but like, do you know where I'm coming from? Do you know he
Yeah.
must be thinking? Surely he must be thinking, because I know if I was it's all well and good me saying this, I suppose, but if I was a former high level athlete, and which involves some form of boxing, and then I'm got asked to fight a YouTuber who has no real boxing experience. Okay, he has done for the past few years and has been training seriously, but like I'd be determined to beat him. I'd be like, I can't lose that guy.
And I think a lot of it does come down to Woodley's mindset. I think that was the problem with Ben Askren. He was there to pick up a paycheck. And if you're Jake Paul, you want the best you want to beat the best Tyron Woodley, because then it's you've ran through these guys who've hardly trained. One basketballer who won a dunk contest in however long ago. Like, you've beat these guys who can't even throw a jab. Like, now you actually need to beat someone with some validity. And if it is Tyron Woodley, and it is the Tyron Woodley, and it's a Tyron Woodley that's trained. I know he's been training with Mayweather, with Paige Van Zandt, with Tyron Spong, which is promising. It does show some promise that he is taking this seriously. That is when we will see how good Jake Paul is. And if I was Jake Paul, I'd want the best Tyron Woodley to be there at the other side of the ring, because if you then beat him, suddenly, like, people like yourself will go, actually, yeah, he has got a bit. Like, we don't know how good he will be. We don't know how far he can go. Does he fight Tommy Fury, whoever? But then he probably does. He does require a bit of like acknowledgement to say, actually, you are okay. Like, you are. We might not like you as a person. Let's put that aside. But you are decent. But yeah, it's a hard one, isn't it? It's hard to put aside him as a person, and also put aside your love for Tyron Woodley. I think obviously you're a big UFC fan. Maybe that's part of it. Like,
no, you could be right.
I love Tyron Woodley, but I just don't see. For me, I think Jake Paul beats him, and I think he beats him quite handedly. I don't know. It's just hard. It's what I mean by that. There's so many questions in this fight, and it's it's sad that boxing is at this point where we've actually discussed this fight in more debate and like how close it is more than any of the other fights on the other 5 episodes that we've done so far. Like this fight is asked the most questions out of any of them, and it's kind of shows the sad kind of state boxing is in at the moment, because on most of these other fights, you see one side and you go, yeah, he's probably going to win. Like there could be an upset. Like a lot of people would say Ugas beating Pacquiao last weekend's an upset, but there hasn't really been many 50-50 proper 50-50 fights in a main event slot for a while in boxing. And maybe I'm being a bit harsh, but I think it has been one of the bigger problems in boxing for a long time. And I think it's been well noted. This has, and I think that is where Woodley's coming from, the UFC. That's why people love the UFC over boxing sometimes. And obviously this is a boxing show, so we will always be biased to boxing, but the UFC's main selling point is that they put the best against the best, because there isn't the other competition out there. There isn't a Matchroom and a Queensbury and whoever else, Top Rank, all these guys. There's just the UFC. Yes, there's Bellator, but no one really is that bothered. And you want to still get those fighters in Bellator would go to the UFC straight away. And I think this fight on Sunday kind of epitomizes the problems that boxing as a whole wider community has. So yeah, again, it's a tough one, isn't it? It's a tough fight to call, and it's a tough fight to watch, really. But it's intriguing at least.
Yeah, big time.
So then, of course, on the rest of that card, we have two of Frank Warren's stable, Tommy Fury and Daniel Dubois, both in, let's be honest, not competitive fights, but it is Tommy Fury after all. What would you expect? You can't expect him to fight anyone with a winning record. He takes on Anthony Taylor. How much are you looking forward to both those fights and seeing them in America?
Yeah, I think although they're both massive favourites and will likely get the job done impressively and quickly, I think it's actually a bit of a masterstroke from Frank, to be honest, because there's two of his in the future hottest prospects that he has in his stable. So there's going to be so many people watching this Jake Paul and Tyron Woodley fight who aren't necessarily big boxing, like really into their boxing. They might be in the future and they might be after this. But if they see, big Daniel Dubois on the undercard, who comes in first round, throws loads of punches, gets an impressive knockout, they might be like, oh, who's this guy? I want to watch him. Tommy Fury, was he the guy on Love Island? Heard he can box a little bit. Oh, he's had a wee bit of back and forth with Jake Paul. So in that sense, I think it's a bit of a masterstroke from Frank, exposing them to a new audience. I'm actually surprised. I would think that's more of an Eddie thing to do than a Frank Warren thing to do. So I'm actually kind of pleasantly surprised from Frank.
See, I'm going to play devil's advocate to you here. I actually think how many people, if you're a Jake Paul fan and you're, let's say, 12 years old, however his oldest fans are you going to sit there from, let's say it starts at 5 p.m. Eastern, are you going to sit there all the way through and watch every single fight until the main event, or are you just going to watch the main event? To me, we've seen this before, and I don't know if Billy Joe Saunders gained that many fans from fighting on the KSI Logan Paul card or Devin Haney. I don't know if they do translate. I do get where you're coming from, but I'll have to see it to believe that actually will help these two guys, and they aren't in competitive fights either. So I don't think we're going to watch. No one's going to watch Tommy Fury fighting on Sunday night and go, what a fight, because he's going to steamroll this guy in a couple of rounds. Same with Daniel Dubois, and I just don't know if those fans do translate as much as people think sometimes. I think we saw it on the other Logan Paul cards and stuff. I don't know how much they do translate.
Yeah, I do hear completely what you're saying, and I do somewhat agree with what you're saying. But then to come back, I suppose it's like they'll fight and they'll win. So at the end of the day, okay, say the Jake Paul fans don't then start watching Daniel Dubois and Tommy Fury. They're in the same place they were in before this fight. Because, the British fans are still going to watch them when they come back on the shows. Like Daniel Dubois definitely has a good following, and Tommy Fury, a lot of people will watch him as well. So in a sense, it's like it's a gamble. It's not even a gamble, but they're going and fighting in America to a new audience on this card to completely more or less a non-boxing audience. So they might, people might not bat an eyelid at it, as you said. They might only just tune in for the main event. They might not care what Tommy Fury and Daniel Dubois are doing, and that's fine. That's fair enough. So then they come back to the UK and fight, and they're in exactly the same place as they were before. So for me, it does no harm at all.
One area that I do think that will help is I don't think it will just be Jake Paul fans watching this fight. I think he's come now to a point where, look, we're talking about it on here now, which is a predominantly boxing show. Like, we're talking about the BT Sport card in a minute. So, like, we are quite a hardcore boxing show. So the fact we're talking about it shows there is kind of a crossover now to that mainstream boxing and those kind of fans. And those kind of fans actually will watch on Sunday. So I think that is maybe where an American boxing audience or American UFC fan, MMA fan audience they're more likely to see Fury, and especially with his surname, and Daniel Dubois fight on Sunday night and actually become fans of these guys and want to follow them in the future. I'm skeptical whether Jake Paul fans will be watching Daniel Dubois fight when he's back fighting in the XL in London and whatever, but I do see a crossover for that American fan base. That is what I do understand and I can get.
Yes, well, I hope you do hope, as Brits ourselves and boxing fans, you do hope Fury and Dubois get more eyeballs, because that would only bring in more eyeballs to our sport and all the other cards and stuff that we put on in the UK. So yeah, best of luck to them, and I hope. Well, let's hope they both get highlight reel knockouts.
Yeah.
Go all over social media and reach new levels, because that could only be a good thing.
Yeah, and it is very Frank Warren to do something Eddie Hearn did 2 years ago, 2 years later. But I'll leave that for another time. So now we are going to bring it back to the UK and a bit more of our bread and butter with the BT Sport card. And I know we've spoken before about, actually, this is kind of a sneaky good card. Like, there's actually some really good fights on this card with some live underdogs, which we spoke about in the betting show. So obviously the main event, you've got Woodley and Ennis-Brown and Sam Maxwell, and you yourself wrote a really good preview for ESBR.com. What kind of things are you looking for in this main event, and how interesting is it?
It's a great fight. It's a great fight for me. You look at it on paper again, which you do straight away, and it's a 15-0 against 14-0. There's a couple of belts on the line, prestigious ones at that, being the Commonwealth and the British. Everyone likes watching British title fights. There's been, a bit of needle, the pushing the other week from Ennis-Brown. The fight was meant to happen a few months ago. Ennis-Brown got injured, so that kind of just adds fuel to the fire for me. And I do really actually like the matchup itself, and then as you said, with the 50-50s, you go and look on your betting app or whatever, and it's not a 50-50 in terms of the betting, as Ennis-Brown is a slight favourite, but it's very close to it. There's not a lot in it. And I think that's right. That shows that it is a good main event. I think it's a lot better than, okay, it's maybe not the name of a Joe Joyce or Daniel Dubois or an Anthony Yard. Okay, he is on the card, but like in a good main event fight for Frank Warren, but it's competitive. It's a very competitive fight, and I'm very much looking forward to it. I hope it lives up to the billing that we're putting on it. I'm really looking forward to it, and the needle's been good. So I just hope it delivers on the night and is a good fight.
We don't want another Rigondeaux Casemiro situation where we're hyping it up on here 4 days before and it absolutely stinks out. For me, I think something that I read in your preview, which people should go read if they are listening to this, is actually how good Woodley and Ennis-Brown's record is. Like you talk about it quite well. It's kind of gone under the radar. I know I spoke to Philip Bowes before that last fight, and I thought Philip Bowes would actually win. And to see Woodley and Ennis-Brown winning the way he did, I think he actually probably does deserve a bit more respect on that British scene. And I think he has been let down by pulling out of fights a bit, and obviously he hasn't fought too much in the last few years. That Bose fight was last year, and yeah, I think it was 11 months ago now. So again, if you're not active, it is hard to kind of get that momentum in terms of fans getting on board. And he clearly has the skills to back that up, and his record does show that, like, really, really well. And on the other side, Sam Maxwell hasn't got that caliber of record, but I think the talent is clearly there. He's an undefeated fighter, and I wouldn't be surprised if he came away with the win either. So it is for me a really intriguing main event, and I think the two fights under that, which you've mentioned as well, which we will talk about again, quite interesting fights. And again, I wouldn't be surprised if we came away from this card with 3 underdog wins in those 3 final fights. I wouldn't be shocked at all if on Saturday night we get those kind of results, which is, as we were just talking about, quite a weird thing for boxing, and quite a nice change actually. And it does make this card, which could have been not that interesting on a Saturday night on BT, actually quite intriguing. So obviously in that second fight, we do have Anthony Kakachi against Leon Woodstock. What do you make of this fight? Who do you think will come away with the British super featherweight title in the end?
That's another fantastic fight made on paper. A really, really good fight for the British super featherweight title, I believe. People might say straight away that I'm going to be biased because I'm from the same place as Anthony Kakachi, but I do think he'll win.
All over again.
I was close that time, so let's hope we do get it right this time. No, all joking aside, it is a good fight. On paper, it's a really good fight. If you look at both their records, yes, they both have. Well, I know Woodstock has 2 losses, but that's to himself, Archie Sharp. That's good company to be in. And like with Anthony Kakachi, his only loss came to Martin J. Ward. So, they're all top-class fighters and well known on the British scene. So, yeah, I hope it lives up to the billing. We were mentioned it on the betting show, and although I do think Kakachi will win and is rightfully the favourite, I think he's maybe a wee bit too much of a favourite. I think maybe Woodstock isn't being given the credit he deserves. So I'm just hoping that it delivers again on the night. I know that last time Kakachi, he won the British title, didn't he, against Sam Bowen? Mm-hmm. So this is his first defence, and it's his first defence in almost 2 years since he won that title.
Fighters obviously haven't fought much recently in that fight.
Yeah, both of them haven't really fought in almost 2 years. One's just short of 2 years. One's over 2 years they haven't fought in. Obviously not through any fault of their own with the COVID situation, but this is their first fight since then. So you don't know. At least you can't say one has the advantage over the other with the freshness, because they both haven't been in the ring for a long time. So I hope that not all adds to the fight. I hope it kind of adds to the fight in the sense that there's an element of the unknown there. Like 2 years is a long time. Someone, you never know. Someone could be completely in their prime. Like Kakachi could be in the middle of his prime. Likewise, Woodstock could come and we could see a different version of either man. So again, it is a good fight. It's a very competitive fight, and one that I'm certainly looking forward to watching on Saturday.
And I think something that has gone under the radar a little bit on that card as well is the return of Anthony Yarde. I fully expect him to win this fight, and the odds do suggest that. Do you think he'll get back in with Lyndon Arthur if he wins this?
Yeah, that's the chat, isn't it? I think. Obviously, we don't know half as much as they all do in the business, but that does seem to be the chat. Obviously, Lyndon Arthur was out a few weeks ago there and got a win. So the rematch looks like it might be the fight to make, because from Yarde's perspective, obviously he wants to put that wrong right. He wants to get the revenge on Arthur. And people are saying, why should Lyndon Arthur be given Anthony Yarde the rematch? But then if you look at it from his sense, yes, he's given him a rematch, but if he beats him again, that puts him, I'd say, even further up the rankings, because Anthony Yarde's still a massive name. He's still a bigger name than Lyndon Arthur. That's twice I've said Leon. And he's still a bigger name than Lyndon Arthur. So if he beat him again, that's what does that say for Lyndon Arthur? There's 2 wins against Anthony Yarde, who fought Kovalev, went close, nearly actually stopped him, and then everyone knows who Anthony Yarde is. He's one of Frank Warren did a good job with him coming up. with not fighting not too many good guys, but he looked $1 million.
Mm.
So yeah, again, I think he'll win and win comprehensively. So I will tune in and watch, and hopefully that fight does get made, because it is a good fight. Be interesting to see if changed anything. What's Arthur's game plan going to be like this time? Because he supposedly just had his jab hand last time. He didn't have a backhand as it was broken. So never know. Will Arthur win more comprehensively? Will Yard come back and knock him out? Who knows?
Yeah, and I think the big thing with Yard for me is his coaching. I think with Tunde, and then that is what kind of has, for me, separated him from being a top domestic and top kind of world level light heavyweight, and that is why Lyndon Arthur can tear him apart with just his jab, because they're what, like, you heard, you must have heard it from the corner, like the kind of advice he was getting isn't that of a top level British and world level light heavyweight, and the kind of things you need to hear. And the fact that Lyndon Arthur beat him, as you say, with one hand, just shows how talented Lyndon Arthur is. And I do feel bad for Lyndon Arthur that he kind of doesn't get the respect that his talents kind of deserve. And Anthony Yard kind of is still seen as this kind of superior fighter, even though he lost to Arthur. But I think, yeah, that fight for me is just about getting Anthony Yard back in the ring, and hopefully we'll see him progress in the future and be in some more big fights, because that division is probably one of the better divisions in British boxing. So that has been the fifth episode of the Boxing Week Ahead. Whether you've watched it or even listened this time, we hope you have enjoyed it. Please subscribe on both YouTube and Apple and Spotify, wherever you listen to your podcast. Thank you again, Paul. And if you would like to, again, I'm going to say it again, if you would like to read a bit more about the card on BT, do check out Paul's article on eatsleepboxingrepeat.com. You'll definitely get a more in-depth analysis of the card again. We also have Greg's prediction videos out on the YouTube channel this week. If you are looking to put a bet on, or just want to have a bit more in-depth breakdown of the two main fights from that BT card, Greg's videos on the YouTube channel are the place to be. Tomorrow we have our weekly betting show that's back after a week away. So have a sit down, listen to what me and Paul think are the most live underdogs on that card and the kind of odds you can get around that. Thank you again, Paul, for joining us. We'll see you next week. Thank you.
Cheers, Sam.